You are on the ball. I appreciate that. But your instructor is a by birth. Um, some people would say a Yankee. I'm not a Yankee fan. I'm a Red Sox fan, so I
Are you
consider
from
myself
New
a
York?
native born New Englander. Born in Connecticut, still have some uncles up there. My mom passed away last year, and I would go back and visit her from time to time. So the original 13 colonies separated from England by 3,000 miles, right? They call this the Big Pond, or that's what they used to call it. England across the pond. Oh, I still haven't got our things in order. But anyway, our man John Locke, remember we learned about Thomas Hobbes a little bit. Another influence upon our founders. The founders in declaring for independence and then encoding in the Constitution we wanted a social contract type of government. It's a contract between the people and the leaders who we elect. We elect leaders to lead us, but they will not become dictators or authoritarian rulers, but they will govern for our protection and for our well-being. What we wanted was a constitutional democracy. We did not want any kind of government where a human being or a group of human beings were the final authority. And so it's really important to understand, students, that our government, including our executive branch with President Biden and his cabinet, our legislative branch with Congress, which includes our senators and our representatives, and then our judicial branch with our Supreme Court and all of the federal courts. They are not our rulers. They are not the final authority. The final authority, which we're going to be leading up to, is the Constitution. If you guys are news junkies, especially political news, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC or maybe listening online to some podcasts or something, you'll hear our news people throw around the phrase that nobody is above the law, not even a president. The Constitution is the final authority and law of the land. And so in our government, we also have a social contract between the people and the people who are elected to be the leaders by the people. I think this is where we left off. Now, when it gets to 11:30, give me a, actually 11:27, give me a 3-minute warning, 11:27. Do it by your watch or your clock on your phone, since that's the official time on computers and social media. So I'm looking at, it's 11:16, so in 11 minutes, I need a 3-minute warning. So major themes of the Declaration, we talked about, there are some truths. That is, there's principles that are self-evident. One of them being human equality, natural rights, which includes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These rights are not granted by the government, but they are endowed by our Creator. This is why this is so radical. This was so radical because remember the great chain of being, the big pyramid, God was on top. And everything underneath it was ordained by God. I'm bringing that back up. Are you guys seeing that right now, the pyramid? No, okay. I'm bringing it back up because I forgot something that I was taught by my college professor. But remember, this was the way it was then. God created this pyramid. What my grad school instructor told us was that really in between God and the monarch, kind of out here floating, was Elvis. Obviously, he was an Elvis fan. But now I can add, years later, Elvis, the king of rock and roll, and the king of pop is who? He is now here.
MJ.
Who?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson and Elvis are hovering above the king, but below God. Can you believe that? All right, back to chapter 2. The purpose of government was to secure these rights, to protect them. The way that justice would be kept and justice would be delegated would be by the consent, the consent of the governed. That is, the people would give their consent to our leaders. If a government becomes meanies, like King George in England were, then there's a right to revolt. Yes, I did say meanies. And then within the Declaration of Independence, and I want you guys to read it over the weekend, okay? Read the Declaration. There's a copy in the back of your textbook, or you can find a free online copy. Read the Declaration and you'll see that in writing it, Jefferson and the others said, we can revolt against any government that becomes oppressive, but even as we revolt, there needs to be self-control. There needs to be limits. And you'll see mentioned in there prudence. Long established governments should not be overthrown for basically little things, light and transient causes. It's got to be major things like the British were doing. They were taxing, right? Everything that was printed, the Stamp Act. They had the Intolerable Acts, which included if a British captain and his men came to your farm and they said, hey, we're going to stay in your barn tonight, you had to let them do it. It was called the Quartering Act. So we said we're going to revolt, but we also said we're not doing it for any little reason. We have major issues. Any questions about the Declaration of Independence? So who is the man whose signature is big and bold and easy to read on the Declaration?
Thomas Jefferson.
Not Jefferson.
Is it Washington?
I mean, you can make out Jefferson, but this guy, he made no mistake
No mistake.
Sometimes people will say, would you put your Hancock right here?
John
And they
Hancock.
mean
John.
Huh?
Gosh.
John Hancock.
John Hancock, right. So when people say, I need your Hancock right here, that they mean your autograph, your signature. Why did so many of them write small?
John took up all the space.
Little louder.
Did John take up all the space? He had to
No,
write small.
no. If King George
Oh
didn't
yeah,
like,
King George saw the signature.
Yeah, if
Then,
he didn't
yeah.
like the Declaration, revolution was going to be punishable by death. So if you wrote really small and hard to make out, maybe King George wouldn't know who you were and he wouldn't send troops to basically gut you, pull out your innards, and then burn them.
Oh,
Nice.
I'll put a link to the National Treasure scene where Nicolas Cage explains that. But yeah, but John Hancock, that man was, that man had some, the Jewish people would say he had some, oh, what's the word? It'll come to me after we finish. But anyway, he had gumption. That's not the Hebrew word, but that's the English word, and I can't think of the Hebrew word. Had some gumption, some guts. All right. So we declare our independence, but remember, we're also, because independence was July 4th, 1776. We had already been in some battles since 1775, right? April 19th, Lexington and Concord. So now we are presently in military battle with the British. We've declared that we are breaking away from them. And so now that we've broken away from the British and they're no longer ruling over us, the next thing that the colonists did was, the next big major thing was to form the first government of our nation. Now, this weekend, while you're at your family's having barbecue or having some kind of dinner or get together, you can drop some knowledge on them and impress them and say, hey, by the way, did you know that our Constitution was not the first government of our nation? No, it was the Articles of Confederation. And sit back and watch your family and friends be awed by your intelligence as you impress them. So after the Declaration of Independence, they start meeting to form a government. And it takes them a few years, so that it's not until 1781 that the Articles of Confederation are adopted by all the states. And a matter of fact, let me take that back. I believe Rhode Island did not adopt it, or they did not ratify it. But, and I see that it's 11:26, so you don't have to give me the 3-minute warning. I'm keeping track here. What the articles did was it gave the 13 different states or colonies, because remember, all 13 colonies already had their own state governments. They all had their own constitutions. They were basically like 13 independent, well, they were 13 independent government bodies, or maybe we should say little nations, although technically they were colonies of the British Empire. But when we broke away from the British with the Declaration of Independence, it was like there was 13 little nations, all with their own governments. And so they sent their delegates to a convention and they formed the Articles of Confederation. So this was how the 13 colonies were going to work together during the Revolutionary War. They dealt with things such as providing uniforms and money for the Continental Army that was doing the fighting. They dealt with the land. Remember how Britain had said they made that line in 1763 down the Appalachian Mountains, and they said nobody could go west of there. Well, after we broke away from England, nobody can stop the states from moving west. And some of the states had already claimed land. And so the Articles of Confederation government dealt with some of the land issues. But, and this is where we'll finish up, the Articles of Confederation were a weak federal government. For example, they could not tax the states. Why is that? Because each state took care of their own taxes. And Little Rhode Island or Little New Hampshire or Little Connecticut, they weren't going to let this bigger body, this bigger government body tell them what to do. The government under the Articles could not regulate trade between the states. Look at this, every state had their own currency. Maybe you can find some of the old currency on that website, Littleton Coin Company. But like Connecticut would have their own money. Virginia would have their own money. There was no common currency. In the Articles of Confederation, every state had equal votes. Every state had one vote. From the littlest state of Rhode Island to the bigger states like Virginia. Even though Virginia had a lot more people living in it, everybody had the same vote in the Articles of Confederation government. There was no president, and there was no judicial branch, no court system under the Articles of Confederation.
Bings, it's 11:30.
All right, thank you very much. Let me get through this last slide and we'll call it a week. Now, if the government under the Articles wanted to pass something, they had to have at least 9 states approve of it, 9 out of 13. Some of the states claimed more land west of the Appalachians. If you look here, this says Virginia. Virginia is over here today, but in 1787, Virginia claimed land all the way to the Mississippi River. Georgia claimed land all the way to the Mississippi. South Carolina had a little sliver here in between Georgia and North Carolina. So the articles had some problems, and I told you that there was no president, but technically, all there was a Congress, and even within the Congress, they elected somebody to be their president. So here's another piece of trivia to impress your family and friends with. Technically, the first president of the 13 colonies that comprised the future United States was Samuel Huntington. He was the first president under the Articles of Confederation. So impress your loved ones and good friends with some good revolutionary, American Revolutionary trivia. So try to read the Declaration of Independence this weekend. Take some notes on it, because I would like for us to talk about it a little bit at the beginning of Monday's class, after we learn from Teddy Roosevelt again how to be a leader. Oh, I forgot Franklin Friday. We got to wait a week to get a selection from Fart Proudly. I'm sorry. You guys have any questions or any comments? Everybody been able now to kind of figure out my beautiful mess of a course homepage? You guys think I'm a meme lord? No, not yet. There's memes everywhere.
Oh, I thought you said me.
All right, well, have a great weekend, and we'll plan on seeing you Monday morning. Let me know if you order a $2 bill.